I was asked to speak about my journey to Palestine, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, my life, in 10 minutes or less. My first memories of Palestine were at university in the mid-1970s, when Palestinian groups like the PLFP were hijacking civilian aircraft in Europe and the Middle East to publicise the Palestinian cause. And I became a Christian at university after a normal upbringing, and the guys who'd helped me most were American fundamentalists. And they believed the founding of the State of Israel in 1948 and the victory against the Arab states in 1967 were in some way the fulfillment of Bible prophecy. And that was the theology I was nurtured on, the milk if you like. I lapped up some of the books they recommended I read. There's a best-selling book by Hal Lindsey called The Late Great Planet Earth, where he uses the Bible on the one hand and the newspapers on the other hand and shows how the Bible is coming true today. So the US and Israel's on God's side, and communist China and Russia as an atheistic government as it was then, along with the Arab states, they're on the bad side, and Europe's got to decide whose side it's on. And I knew which side I was on at the time. My first degree was in geography, and that was because of my first love is travel and discovering more of God's beautiful world. And so when I began to train as an Anglican priest, my passion was to visit the Holy Land. We called it the Holy Land, neutral. Because many see it as the fifth gospel, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, and the land. So my first visit was a subsidised familiarisation tour for clergy organised by a travel company that encourages clergy to go out in the hope that they will organise tours in the future. And it focused on places mentioned in the Bible: Bethlehem, Jerusalem, Nazareth, Galilee. There was very little interaction with contemporary Israel or the Palestinian issue. What began as they call it a lifetime, a journey of a lifetime, quickly became an addiction. And so for the next 30 years, I was traveling at least once a year to Palestine. The first pilgrimage I organized was one where we were given a Messianic Jew as a tour leader. His name was Zvi. And I couldn't work out why he was nervous about meeting us at our hotel in East Jerusalem. We picked him up when we crossed the hidden border, if you like, to West Jerusalem. And as often happens on tour groups, you're in a queue with other tour groups ahead of you. And so we were sitting on the Via Dolorosa waiting to get into one of the sites when we had an impromptu Q&A session. And someone asked him, who are the Palestinians? And Zvi pulled out a little leaflet. He gave a copy to everyone. He was obviously ready for this question. And it was a quote from Golda Meir: "The Palestinians don't exist. They are Arabs. They can go and live wherever they like. And they've infiltrated Israel and benefiting from what we've achieved." Well, nobody dared ask any more questions. But we got to Nazareth and we went to the church there, Christ Church, and Canon Ria, the vicar, Ria Abal Asal, he was actually banned from travel internationally by the Israelis because of his political involvement with the PLO. But we sat in his church and everyone was falling asleep. Zvi was standing in the corner and Ria gave his short talk, which he obviously gave to every tour group that went through the church. And it was basically 4 words: why he was an Israeli, Arab, Palestinian Christian. And suddenly a wave of cognitive dissonance fell on everyone in the room, because here was Zvi, who denied a Palestinian existed, and here was Ria saying, "I'm a Palestinian." And that really set me on that journey of trying to work out how one people denied another people and another claimed that they were being denied their existence. That was a turning point in my spiritual as well as political journey. 2 parallel, contradictory, competing narratives, mutually exclusive. On successive visits, I met with more and more Palestinian leaders and groups, organisations such as Holy Land Trust, YAM, BBC, Bethlehem Bible College, Sabil Kairos, and we incorporated visits to them and meeting them in the itineraries. I became a director of a travel company Didn't pay any money, but it was great because I got to go to Palestine for free, organising tours. But progressively, we were promoting tours, what we call the Living Stones tours, meeting with the living stones rather than going to take photos of the dead stones. I was getting bored in the ministry, and so I undertook a master's degree, and my thesis examined the ethical management of pilgrimages, because I was becoming increasingly aware of how pilgrimages, and the vast, vast majority of pilgrimages, follow a predetermined script set by the Israeli Ministry of Tourism. Day one, you go to Yad Vashem so that you will shut up about the way they treat the Palestinians. You'll go to a kibbutz, you'll go to the Western Wall, you'll go to Masada, and you'll go to a diamond factory on the way home. None of those sites have anything to do with the Bible, but they're all part of most pilgrimage tours. And perhaps 95% of tour groups never meet with a local Christian or worship with them on a Sunday. We'll have a service by the Sea of Galilee or in the garden too, but never with the local Christians. If you want the tour maps, for example, you get free maps from the Israeli Ministry of Tourism, but there are no international borders on them. If you want maps that are accurate, you have to pay for them. It's that kind of way in which the whole tourism industry is geared towards Israel. Just after the first Intifada, I was invited to go out to Palestine to help a friend, Garth Hewitt, who's a singer and songwriter, to help him with a concert tour of the West Bank. So I became his wine taster, his PA and his sound engineer. And we visited some of the villages like Ramallah, Zababde, Nablus. They were under curfew. We had to run the gauntlet through Israeli checkpoints. We were nearly blown up with a firebomb. But on my return, when I got to Ben Gurion Airport, they strip searched me and accused me of spying. So I felt it had been worth it. On the last day I was there, the Bishop of Jerusalem, Samir Kafiti, asked if I would host a young Palestinian clergyman, Sahi from Nazareth, in our parish in Guildford, because he had very little experience of the Anglican Church. So for 3 months, Zahi lived with us as a family, and I farmed him out to hospital, chaplaincies, prisons, schools, other churches, institutions, to really give him a flavour of the Anglican Church. One occasion I introduced him to the Mayor of Guildford at a reception. She said, "Oh, it's delightful to meet you, Zahi. I once met your Prime Minister, Golda Meir." And he didn't know what to say. He said, "Well, she was a good Prime Minister for her people, but not for mine." And that was the end of the conversation. On another occasion, we were at an event like this, and he'd spoken passionately, and then someone put their hand up and said, "Can you tell us what a Palestinian is?" You know, embarrassing Zahi, suggesting, "Who are you?" But it helped me empathise with him and galvanise my commitment to be part of the solution rather than the problem. Again, getting bored again after my master's, I started to undertake a PhD into historical roots, theological basis, and political consequences of Christian Zionism. No one had really examined Christian Zionism as a movement. There were no books on the subject. But I wanted to interrogate my own Christian roots and understand why Western Christians typically, and especially in the US, support Israel uncritically, unconditionally, and why the Palestinians are denigrated. And it took me about 10 years to get the thesis written. I published 2 books out of it, and it got me into a lot of hot water. I discovered that Christian Zionism preceded Jewish Zionism by at least 50 years, that Christian Zionists, what we call them proto-Christian Zionists, because they were committed to Zionism before the word had even been written in the 1880s, they were responsible for sponsoring the movement. And the other profound realization is that at least 9 out of 10 Zionists in the world are Christians. So when you think Zionism, think Christian Zionism, not Jewish Zionism. Jewish Zionists represent about 10% of the movement. The hot water, well, the Zionist lobby tried to get my PhD revoked. Middlesex University stood up to them and rejected that. Then they set up an anonymous blog called Seismic Shock, play on my surname, to discredit me. It was anonymous, but they published articles about me, accusing me of anti-Semitism, associating with Holocaust deniers, terrorists. And unable to intimidate me, they tried to isolate me by intimidating others associated with me. Church leaders, any organisation I was associated with, they targeted. And I'd get invited to speak somewhere, and then I'd get disinvited, and then I'd get re-invited after I'd been disinvited. Ironically, the attacks opened doors, especially within the Muslim world, and I had the privilege of helping to set up the Balfour Project, to speak at PSC conferences, and as Yasmin has mentioned, a number of conferences in Palestine, the Christ at the Checkpoint conferences, based in Bethlehem, and 2 international conferences for the Arab League, one in Dubai and one in Baghdad, of all places, in the presidential palace in the Green Zone in Baghdad, which was about Palestinian child prisoners. That was incredibly embarrassing, because my paper was all about G4S and why G4S was responsible for imprisoning and committing war crimes against Palestinian children that they were holding in detention, torturing, and so on. I finished my presentation, relaxed, got off the podium, and 2 men very well dressed approached me from some Iraqi ministry, and they wanted a copy of all my research, my documents, my presentation. Discovered it had gone out live on Iraqi TV, and G4S was responsible for the security of Baghdad airport. You get that, okay? For how long, I don't know, after my presentation, but hopefully not for long. When my books were translated to Arabic and Farsi, I got invitations to lecture in universities in Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, Jordan, Gulf states, Morocco, Algeria, Libya, Turkey, Iraq, Iran, and Malaysia. And so I had a gold card with BA for a few years. I used to produce 2 programs for Al Etija TV in London, their English language programs, and I helped produce a film called With God on Our Side, which is a critique of Christian Zionism. It's on YouTube, it's free, I recommend it. And that opened up opportunities to lecture in the USA, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. When intimidation didn't work, when isolation didn't work, they tried to incriminate me. And on one evening, 2 police officers turned up at our door to interview me. Thankfully, they exonerated me and told my critics to go away. But then the Board of Deputies of British Jews, over a 10-year period, began to make formal complaints against me to the Church of England, alleging I had offended the Jewish community. Eventually, they succeeded, and that led to my early retirement from the Church of England, and I set up a charity called Peacemaker Trust, dedicated to advocating for those who are marginalised, persecuted, or human rights are abused. It ended with a tribunal, an ecclesiastical tribunal, which is kind of a court case. But my barrister pointed out that even though I was suspended, the Board of Deputies had been unable to find a single word of mine out of 40 years ministry deemed anti-Semitic. And they could not or would not present a single witness alleging I had offended the Jewish community. They relied entirely on prejudicial, second-hand newspaper articles and anonymous sources, which in a civil or criminal court would be deemed inadmissible. But they got away with it because it was an ecclesiastical tribunal. Again, God has a sense of humour, because when that door closed, other doors have opened since. And so in the last year, I got much more involved in Jewish and Muslim organisations. So today I'm chair of the Convivencia Alliance, which brings together Jewish, Muslim and Christian organisations. I'm chair of the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions, which campaigns for the end of apartheid and for one democratic state. And I'm helping to organise a conference in Bethlehem this November. I'm the coordinator of an international conference on religious extremism, which will challenge the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, challenge Islamophobia and Christophobia. And I'm the first director of the Institute for the Study of Christian Zionism, which we're launching in the States later this year. I closely work with the Islamic Human Rights Commission, Jewish Network of Palestine, One Democratic State campaign, and I'm now on the European Coordination Committee for Palestine, which brings together ECCP, which brings together about 40 different EU groups. This week, I gave a lecture at Mardin Atuklu University in Turkey, online, and they kindly awarded me the Courage Award for 2024. So if you want to find out more about this on my website. And I gained citizenship of Bethlehem, so I have a second passport. You can get one as well, you just have to pay £50, but you can get a passport. If you'd like to know more about my work on Christian Zionism, you can, at the back, there's a 4-page leaflet, which is the summary of 10 years research. It's a simple 101. I liken Christian Zionism to a balloon. How many pins do you need to burst a balloon? I'll give you 7, anyone will do. It's dead easy to destroy, discredit, demolish their theology. It's a balloon of hot air. But today, and increasingly, I'm delighted to support PSC Southampton. Thank you.